People of Launceston would be quite surprised to learn that the City of Launceston built such things. It was a valid threat. Remember, after all, Darwin was bombed twice. Sydney, there was the submarines into the harbour. The older people of Launceston should remember it, of course, but there's so many new people to Launceston, I'm sure they have no idea. Hi, my name's Randall Langdon. I'm a civil engineer with the City of Launceston. I've got a great story for you today. We're here today at the Queen Victoria Museum and Art Gallery. We're here to look at another interesting piece of Launceston's history. With the onset of hostilities in September 1939, the start of World War II, all thoughts progressed to the protection of Australia and indeed Tasmania and in Launceston itself. The Tasmanian Legion, Defence Legion as it was called, looked after local civil defence here in Launceston. It was a unit that was about 1,800 people strong. Initial attention was more about air raid warnings and those sort of basic things, blackouts and that sort of thing. So the war in Europe progressed and then towards 1941 down through the Pacific as well. I think the locals became more aware of the need to fortify defences, and so talk came about of need for trenches in councils' parks and that sort of thing. And so late in 1941, around December, Council actually started to plan for slit trenches in our local parks, so parks like Princess Square, Royal Park and Cornwall Square down behind the Town Hall now. So in December 1941, Pearl Harbor, so again the war is definitely on in the Pacific Ocean, and the urgency to dig those trenches definitely was there, and work was started. And in January there was the first of the air raids in Darwin, and so war was really on the doorstep of Australia. Attention really turned to some proper civil defences here in Launceston. So the immediate direction was to build slit trenches, particularly at schools and around schools. So I suppose the schools would have been going back in February, and they even enlisted Town Hall staff to head out with other volunteers, and they went round all the schools in Launceston and built those trenches. And they were usually in W shapes, 10 people to a trench, and the trench was 25 feet or about 8 metres long, up to my shoulder, 1.6 metres high, and about 1 metre wide at the top. Might have been only good for school kids at that size, because my head would have certainly been poking out the top. The reports of the day actually had it that there were about 500 people who were catered for in trenches down in Cornwall Square, Royal Park and Princess Square. Up until then there'd been a lot of discussion about the need for a proper bomb shelter, we'll call it, or air raid shelter. And now that war was really quite close at hand, those discussions progressed quite quickly, and tenders were called by the council, and construction of the first air raid shelter for Launceston occurred here at the town, right here at the Town Hall. They were reinforced concrete structures built to a national design, and in size, and to put it into context, it was about the size of 1.5 big shipping containers, so around about 60 feet long overall, about 7 to 9 feet high. They had basic amenities inside, so a toilet, lighting and that sort of thing, and row of 3 wooden slat benches for people to sit on, and most of them were to cater for 50 people at a time. Council had agreed to build 11 air raid shelters. Elsewhere in the city there were another 5 built by large firms for the protection of their employees, but they were also available for the public. Those air raid shelters thankfully were never used in anger, but the Defence Legion did organise a couple of proper full-scale dress rehearsals for Launceston, and everybody was expected to apply the rules of the air raid and go to the shelters and all those sorts of things. Very interestingly, they had the police out there to actually make sure that people complied. The urgency of conducting these rehearsals was brought home because the war had progressed on to late 1942 and into 1943, and they had feared that Tasmania could be used for a base for attack on mainland Australia, and the Tamar River in particular, because remember in those days the aircraft wouldn't have had the guidance systems that we have today, and the Tamar Estuary was a natural guiding path straight to Launceston and keep going onto Hobart down south. So it was, the possibility of such an attack was real, and the people in charge of local defence had thought this all out and planned for the safety of people. So in January of 1944, war was obviously getting a little towards a close, and talk had already begun of what would be the future of these air raid shelters. Quite a few of the aldermen of the day had thought that they might have made good public toilets in the future. There was obviously no need for the air raid shelters anymore, and it was time to demolish them. Luckily, Launceston had built most of the air raid shelters on council-owned land, so they could take their time about it, whereas the ones in Hobart were actually built right in the main roads. So up here, the first one that they tried to demolish was in the Kingsway, and they even resorted to using explosives, and that didn't work out too well at all, and the buildings withstood the force. And if you think about it, if they were designed properly, that's exactly what should happen. They should stand the force of explosives quite well. And jumping forward through to the middle 1980s and then 1990s, I remember the last two of the shelters being demolished. The first one at the back of York Town Square as part of that development, and it was a good push by an excavator. Soon finished off that air raid shelter, and ditto, similarly down in back of Birchall's car park behind the Sandler's shoe shop there was another one there, and an excavator made fairly easy meat of that one as well.